Hey guys, it's First Spice here back with another video, and today I am doing a tutorial on how to make a fursuit tail because a couple people have been asking me on different social medias. So this is my updated version on how I make my fursuit tails. So first I am making the pattern of the tail. I'm making the tail how long I want it to be and the shape of the tail, and then make sure I left room for the belt loops, and I'm currently cutting it out. And I did use poster board because poster board is a lot sturdier when it comes to making patterns for things, and so it is easier to use. I don't know why I lost my train of thought there, but I am cutting it out here, and then I'm going to write out the colors I want on the tail. So the top is going to be gray, the bottom is going to be green, and I'm making a down arrow because fur direction goes down on tails. So after I made the patterns and everything, I cut out the separate patterns that I need for the tail, and I'm starting at the bottom of the tail first. So I'm going to trace the pattern onto the fur, and then I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to trace it twice, one way, and then I'm going to flip it on the opposite way and then trace it like that as well, and making sure the fur is going downwards. You do not want the fur going any other direction, and I'm doing it for the gray fur as well. I highly recommend using colored pencil or chalk to trace on fur. I do not recommend Sharpie because when you wash it, it can bleed through, but I did cut off the Sharpie. I didn't leave room or any Sharpie on the fabric, so please use some other material or just cut off the marker because marker can bleed through if you make it wet, so you need to be aware of that. So now that I cut out the fur, this is a little tricky part. This is what I use as a belt loop. So what we're going to do is cut out a circle material out of a piece of material you would like to use for your belt loop. I use minky pink fabric. It's super soft and I love it. And so we're going to cut out a little circle here, and that's the little circle that I use as a belt loop. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get 2 pieces of elastic. Usually I just use one and put it in the middle for small tails, but since this is a medium to a big tail, I am putting 2 pieces of elastic like that, but I will be sewing it. So this is how I'm sewing the elastic. I'm basically going to sew it straight and then straight again. So I'm going to double sew the same area to make sure it's sturdy, because a belt loop will be on it, it will be tugged, and it will be harshly played with, so you need to make sure it is very sturdy. And if you want a tutorial on how to actually sew, let me know, but I will leave a bunch of tutorials down below on how to basic sew. I use a basic stitch. I do not use anything extremely complicated to sew anything on this tail. So I'm just cutting the excess elastic off of the belt loop, and then I'm sealing it with a couple knots, and that's how I seal my sews when it comes to hand sewing. And there's one belt loop, and then we're gonna go ahead and sew the other one. So there you have it, both are sewn and are perfectly, so we're gonna put that to the side until we're done sewing the tail. Now I am currently sewing the 2 pieces of the same side of the pattern's tails, so I highly recommend like marking 1-1 for the same side patterns if you have a different colored tail. But currently what I'm doing is I'm getting pins, and I am pinning the section together to make sure everything is even and everything is secure, so when I start hand sewing, nothing shifts and nothing is too long than the other. So I'm just checking it before I sew. That is really important. You don't want to start sewing when especially when you're hand sewing, you don't want to start sewing and then completely mess up, because you're going to have to completely take all of what you did apart and re-sew it, and that could be a lot. So currently I am sewing the 2 pieces together. Sorry for the creepy mannequin head in the background. I was working on the fursuit head as well as the tail, but I am currently sewing, and it's very small stitches, and it's very simple stitches, but they're very small so they don't come apart, because again, tails are has to be very durable because you're wearing it and you're going to be running around. It's going to be pulled, so very tight stitches. Okay, so now that I finished sewing one part of the fur and then I sew both parts, we're going to sew them together. So what I do is I actually put the colored parts together first, and then I start pinning them to make sure, again, the tail is the right length, both sides are identical, and I can start sewing them. This is a very important part because you do not want to start sewing and then you mess up, or one part is too long than the other and you have to make minor adjustments, just because hand sewing is a lot more tedious than machine sewing, and if you mess up, it's a longer process to fix. So I recommend pinning your pieces together to make sure everything is perfect before you start sewing. Oh, and make sure you tuck the fur in. I forgot to say that, but make sure you tuck the fur in before you start sewing, to make it easier and faster for you to sew. So as you can tell, I'm using the same stitches I did to sew the color pieces together, but I am doing a very simple stitch, very tiny spaces, so that I do not leave any gaps. You do not want to leave any gaps in your tail because you will be stuffing it, and again, it will be used a lot, so you need to make sure that it's very durable. So I'm making really small stitches, very simple. Again, I'll leave a video down below on simple sewing stitches and you can choose which one you prefer. So once I'm done sewing both pieces together, we're going to turn the tail inside out so the fur is facing outwards. And we're going to be very gentle. Now I left the hole where the circle that we made earlier, I left the same size hole where the belt loop's going to be, because that's where we're going to sew it, and that's also where we're going to stuff the fur. So we're going to turn it inside out like so, make sure everything is turned inside out, and then we're going to start stuffing. I stuff very slowly. As you can tell, I put small increments of stuffing, and then I push it all the way at the bottom and make sure everything feels secure and stuffed before I add more stuffing. And that's kind of the process I do. I stuff very slowly to make sure everything is even and feels nice. So after we stuff the whole tail, we are going to sew the circle on. Now there is an easier way to make a belt loop. You can just sew the elastic straight on the fur, but I think this looks a little more professional. You're just going to sew the circle where you left a circle gap in the fur, and you're gonna very slowly sew it. And I recommend pinning it, but I do not pin this section just because I just really don't need to, because I've done it so many times. But I recommend pinning it like you would the fur. But yeah, as you can see, I'm just sewing that piece on, and I'm gonna be securing it with a knot like I always do. And that is the finished product. This is the tail. This is the tail that was commissioned, and this is what it looks like. It has the 2 belt loops and it is really gorgeous. And yeah, that's how I make my tails. I hope you guys enjoyed.